This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
The first 3 tracks of the season have all been regulars on the Lotus 49 schedule. They're circuits which have proven to be fairly popular in this community. As such, it's not too great of a surprise that Dudagnan has kicked off his championship run with a hat trick of wins. Today might just trip things up though. Motegi's GP course doesn't always see much use in just about any series. Can anyone use this chance to stop the French phenom? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch round 4 of the Lotus 49 Grand Prix Legends Series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing channel and the iRacing Esports Network. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Samuel Ryman. Behind the scenes is our director Sean Crackers Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Sam, since this might not be a track our audience has seen very often, why don't you give us the rundown on Motegi?
Yeah, Motegi's, like you say, not quite a Grand Prix course, but still has a lot of things that make up a Grand Prix course. A long straights, a variety of corners, pretty long ways around, just a tick under 3 miles or 5 kilometers with 14 turns. The Formula 1 car has been raced here on Motegi before plenty of times on iRacing, as well as more modern renditions of a Dallara IndyCar. So this circuit is definitely capable of playing host to these machines. However, as you mentioned, the lack of use that this track gets, combined with the high temperatures we sometimes see here in Japan, means, especially at these flatter turns, there is a little bit of a grip problem. But there's always a grip problem in these cars. Let's take a look at just how bad it is with our GSRC lap guide.
Alright, we've got Reed Miller and the GSRC Williams, so let's do a lap around Motegi. Turns 1 and 2 are going to act as one corner effectively, but even though you'll be braking a decent amount, expect passes into here to be a little tough. Now we find ourselves on another long stretch down towards 3. Drift off to the right and be ready to brake a lot more than the first turn. It's sharper on entry, making overtakes more likely, but it's also a wider exit. That means the run down to 5 really sees some speed start to build up. Just like before, you're going to cross the circuit and get ready for your brake marker. 5 is the sharpest of this series of back and forth turns, and it's not uncommon to see drivers outbrake themselves. It immediately takes you under the oval into the outfield portion of the track. 6 is flat out, but it leads pretty quickly into 7 and 8. This set of S's tightens on the second apex, and drivers will probably find it tough to follow in the wake of the car ahead. That means the hairpin of 9 will be tantalizing because you'll want to try and overtake, but few people will be close enough to pounce. It also tightens a lot on the exit, so don't get too greedy on the power. Then we've got turn 10, which is one of the more critical corners on the circuit. There's a slight uphill, but it's pretty much a straightforward 180-degree bend. It leads you onto the backstretch, so making sure you don't get wheel spin or hesitate on the power will be of utmost importance. But while 11 is ideal for overtakes, you've got to be wary because there's a downhill drop right on the entry. Back under the oval, we return to the infield section and the final few corners. The chicane of 13 and 14 are probably the most tricky of the entire course with its awkward braking. Mistakes could set up a drag race to the finish line, but hopefully you've now finished a lap around Motegi. You see a lap around in more modern F1 machinery, a little bit quicker than these cars will be able to circulate, especially with the temperatures that we've got out on track. But we'll get to that in a second. First, let's go over the championship situations, starting with the F1 Drivers' Championship. Michel Dudagnan still continuing that perfect run, 50 points for win each round. They have no bonus points in this series, so obviously he's got 150 on his plate. Now, Ove Trangrade has recently jumped up into the second position, and Roman Pavlovsky's followed him into third. Mick Claridge, let's see, actually, is Mick here today? Because I did not see him in practice, and indeed, I don't see him out there. So he'll continue to plunge, though they do have drop weeks, which we'll talk about in a second. Eduardo Prado also having a pretty good introduction to this series. Sam, we also have a Formula 2 championship, sort of an amateur championship. How's that shaping up?
Well, let's take a quick look here, Drew. We're still early into the championship, so you know, there's still plenty of room for shuffling around, and especially with as close as it is. You can see we've got a two-way tie for the top spot between Hugh Haycox and David Ross. Steve Hogan is only 1 point behind, so that's as easy as picking up a position, and he could take a lead of the championship. And there you see 4th and 5th place a little bit further back, but definitely still in the run-in this early on into the season.
Absolutely. Now let's take a look at the Constructors' Championship. And this is effectively a Nations Cup that they run. France is leading with that perfect run that Dudignon is having. Mick, because of a little bit of help from Phil Lake, who's been showing up from time to time, and I do believe he is actually here today, are sitting in second. Trangrade down there in third for Norway. It's Olenek and Thiel who have been contributing for the U.S. points, and then Pawlowski is really the only driver out there for Germany so far who has been able to capture points. What about the race details? We might have some viewers who haven't logged in yet to see one of these races, Sam. So what's today's race going to look like?
Well, it's going to be average length, and yeah, not a whole lot to say here, honestly. It's an 18-lap race around about a 3-mile long road course, still early on in the championship. Open setups for each of these drivers to help them get comfortable with the Lotus 49, which is something that's very tricky to do, and points pay all the way down to 25. So some drivers will not get points today, Joe. We've actually got quite a large field. Nothing really jumping out at me on this screen as tricky things that the drivers are going to have to deal with other than the car, and as you alluded to just a couple of moments ago, the temperature, I think, is a key player here today.
In fact, let's take a glance at that and look at the track surface temperature. 114 degrees. They're going to be slipping and sliding around quite a bit. Wind isn't too much of a concern, and thankfully the air temperature is feeling pretty good out here in Japan. 74 degrees for our virtual fans. Now, as always, this series is brought to you on the iRacing Esports Network. Make sure and subscribe. All you got to do is go to their YouTube page. If you haven't subscribed yet, the subscribe button will be bright red. Click that, and you'll get all of the Grand Prix Legends series in your YouTube feed. Qualifying is working its way through, and just under 2-minute laps, we're getting most of the drivers shuffling in with their first one, some of them coming around for their second. This is Daniel Sadro that we're watching, but surprisingly, it is Eduardo Prado on the provisional pole with his first lap.
Yeah, let's see if any of that changes. Each of these drivers has the racetrack to themselves, which is understandable given as edgy as this car is. You don't want to really have to deal with a driver making mistakes in front of you. And we're watching Sadro come across the line now. Can he jump up any positions? The line's quite a long way down the straight, actually, but he did not improve on his time.
He did not, so he will only be as high as 5th as he exits the session. They only get 2 laps if you're new to this. And Michel Dudignon is coming around. Let's see if he can get himself up to pole and make it 4 for 4. He comes to the line at a 148.1 for his first lap. His second lap is a 148 flat. And that only gets him on the front row, does not give him pole. But that's still going to give him a chance at taking another win. This is Roman Pawlowski now, and Roman has just finished his second lap, which was not faster, unfortunately. Let's take a watch for Johnny Bell. His first lap did not count, so he's a little bit under pressure. And in fact, I don't believe we typically have Johnny Bell in this series. He runs in the Camel Series, which is in a couple hours this Saturday. So how is he without any sort of downforce on the car? He's good enough for a 154.1, which is well off the regular time. So he is going to be last on the timing sheet. What about Jamie Hall? We have seen Jamie here every now and then, but also a regular from the Camel Series. Wonder if they organized something when we weren't looking that brought a few of these drivers over. He's at a 148.9. You can tell that he's gotten used to this car. He's sitting in 6th, and a 148.8 is a little bit faster, but does not bring him up the order. He's still on the outside of row 3.
Yeah, what's that term, Joe, for people who like pain? Mercedonis or something like that? There's got to be a term similar to that to people who like driving really hard to handle cars. We're seeing a lot of drivers jumping over from Camel GT to Lotus 49.
I think the term you're looking for is masochist, but Andrew Eng is getting ready to... Actually, no, he set both of his laps, so he's just going to slowly cruise in. And I'm not sure that we'll have anybody else able to complete a time because it's ticking down. So that's going to be the end of our qualifying. Eduardo Prado, could we see him take a maiden win in his rookie season here on the broadcast races? He is sitting on the pole currently with Michel Dudignon next to him. It should be a tight fight, and Roman Pawlowski will be starting 3rd. Ian Haycox, an excellent qualifying for Ian, up in 4th. That is a bit of a surprise. Rob Olenek, last season's champion, will start P5 with Jamie Hall in 6th. Dan Sadro gets bumped down to 7th eventually with his time, and Gary Teal runs 8th. Then Bruce Nelson qualifies 9th. The other Haycox, Hugh, qualifies in the top 10.
With a number 4 car, you would have expected Philippe Lake to qualify a bit better than 11th, but that's not the case. He'll be starting alongside Billy Bob Wright. In 12th, Alberto Pellegrini will be starting from the lucky 13th position, ahead of a number 14 in 14th position, Steve Hogan. Philip Urquhart will be starting from 15th, ahead of Andrew Eng, and then we have Andreas Bruno and David Rossi on row number 14. Ryan Garbin and Bill Tyler round out the top 20.
21st goes to Donnie B. Good, and Telmo Almiral is in 22nd. Then Colin Coker runs 23rd, and Johnny Bell still the last one to put a time in at 24th. The last 3 drivers didn't get a qualifying time on the board. Jacques Richard, Robert Reynolds, and Jasmine Beach are your last 3 on the grid. Waiting for the cars to finish gridding up, then we'll get everybody revving their engines. The lights will come up, and we will go racing for round 4 here in Japan. I believe Robert Reynolds is the last one we are waiting on. You can see the huge field for this series that we got today. 27 cars decided to show up, which is a bit of a surprise for a less than popular track. As the lights come up, the engines start to rev. Green flag is out, and it is a good start for Prado. Michel Dudignon is decent, but Pawlowski looks pretty good around the outside. Going to try and break a little deeper down into turns 1 and 2, but eventually starts to lose grip. We got a car off course a little bit in the back, a little bit of 3 wide, but otherwise they all come back on course, and it looks like they're good.
That was Bruce Nelson who ran into the gravel there. He started 9th. That's obviously going to cost him some position. So Prado has been able to hold on to that top position. He's got the number 2 car. It's an official series race. It tells you he's got a good I rating and expect him to stay up front. But Michel Dudignon still right behind him in 2nd.
A whole stream of cars. And indeed, Daniel Sadro on a bit of side-by-side action with Jamie Hall, who manages to move himself up into P6.
Ooh, Hugh Haycox just had a big bobble there through that right-hander kink. Normally a nothing turn, but there's no such thing as a nothing turn in this car.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure that there's any turns in this car that you can take flat out at this track. Already they've hit turn 9. And then it's the run up to turn 10, another of the possible opportunities for a pass. Dudignon starting to threaten a little bit, and in fact makes a dive to the inside of Eduardo Prado. Now down the backstretch. I'm not sure that he got a good enough run. Momentum initially to Prado, but it starts to go back to Michel Dudignon. He's got the inside down to turn 11. Can he finally seal the deal and take the lead away? Still side by side into the corner. Prado's not going to give this one up easily. He wants to take his first win. still not giving up. They're going into the chicane. This is not usually a too-wide situation that you take through here, and Prado defends successfully. Incredible.
Great driving by Prado, but, well, he might be challenged here again, heading into turn 1 on lap number 2. Dudagnon looks down the inside, but that was all set up the turn before the hairpin. Prado was a little out of a racing line. Dudagnon saw the mistake. He tried to take the opportunity. He hasn't been able to make anything happen yet, but as these two ran side by side, that's bunched everyone up behind them. Pretty much have a 5-car pack and looking for this lead. More than that, actually.
Yeah, they're being joined by yet more. It's Pawlowski, Olenek, Haycox. Hall is back there now, and Sadro has joined the fray. It is a 7-car fight for the lead, and we're on lap 2.
So we're coming up through this middle section of the track again, where Prado got it a bit wrong last time, and Dudagnon stuck his nose in, tried to take a lead. So they go through this left-right chicane here, and as they come up to this left-hander, this is just the one that Prado, I guess he overshot it a bit last lap because he was out of a groove on exit. Let's see if he nails it right this time around.
That looks like
contact for third! And off goes Olenek.
And he falls all the way down to 9th because of that. Now, who was that clipped him?
Well, it was Pawlowski. I think he got into the back of Pawlowski and spun as a result.
Yeah, it was a little wide, Pawlowski, and thought maybe he could stick his nose in, and then all of a sudden it all went wrong as the car went around. Let's watch from on board. Not sure if this was intentional that he was trying to pass, or if it was just because of Pawlowski being a little slow.
Yeah, I think Pawlowski came in a little wide, and this car is hard to, change direction. If it's committed to going somewhere, it's kind of hard to tell it to do something else without spinning. So he probably said, no, the car says I'm going for this gap, and then the gap wasn't there anymore.
Oh, and as that happened, Bruce Nelson got ran into the back of. He's since had to take a tow. Either his suspension got damaged or something in the engine was borked with the contact that he made. Don't need to go to it now because action is still very hot here at the front of the field. Not just who we're watching here, Michel Dudagnon and Eduardo Prado, but Ian Haycox and Jamie Hall. In fact, I think Hall's about to make an overtake, and this is for 4th position down into turn 5. Hall gets it and sneaks his way through.
So that's the 2nd position that Hall's picked up this race. He started 6th, he's now up to 4th. Other big movers, Billy Wright has gone from 12th to 7th, but let's see how Hall got this done. Pretty simple move down the inside. Oh, and as we say that, if we come back to live action, Dudagnon is challenging Prado for the lead. They are side by side.
Yet again, it's out of turn 9. Prado to the inside, coming out into turn 10. Could see an over-under here from the Frenchman. He looks for it. He does get a good launch. He's going to get a little bit of slipstream. Now he ducks to the inside. The number 1 car tried this last time, and it didn't quite work out. He's got quite a bit of speed compared to Prado. They're even on the brakes. Down into the right-hander. He's a little bit more ahead than what he was before, but look at the car squirm for Prado. They duck under the bridge, and this time Dudagnon gets it done.
Prado's still alongside, going to try and over-under as they come out onto the front straight. They're wheel-to-wheel again. Prado was just hanging on as they went under the bridge, as you said, but now he's gathered himself together again. He's still thinking about the lead, but not this time around. Dudagnon closes the door, and Dudagnon, for the first time, is leading this race, but what can Prado do? Can he respond?
Wow, this is only lap 4, Sam, and this is a real tit-for-tat battle. I can't believe how evenly matched they've been so far. And all this fighting, as you mentioned earlier, has kept the lead close with more cars involved. Pawlowski's still hanging on behind them. And Jamie Hall, with his steady progress through the field, could maybe get up and close enough for an attack as they come up to turn 5 now. Prado staying close to within 3/10 of Michel.
Yeah, kind of feel bad for the rest of the field. We've had such a good scrap going on for the lead in the opening laps. Haven't really reported on a lot of the battles back then. There definitely have been some hanging around the 10th, 11th positions right now. In fact, we got a good battle going on for 8th, Drew.
That's Billy Bob Wright and Phil Lake. Lake is trying to chase him down. Started from 11th, he's up to 9th, seeing if he can get one more. He's a little bit more tidy down to the apex of 9. They come up to 11th though, and Billy Bob got himself a good run to keep safe into this right-hander. Yeah,
definitely one of our bigger movers in the front half of the field is Billy Bob going from up to 8th position now, having qualified all the way back in 12th. It's hard to make passes, well, in this car, just in general, I should imagine.
He stays right with them as they come back to the infield portion. We've lost a couple more cars that we're not sure what happened. We'll have to go back and check that out. Telbo Almorales is retired fully. He's out of the session. It looks like Colin Coker is in the pits waiting for repairs. Snelson's come back out, and David Rossi had something happen where he took some repairs and has returned to the track as this battle continues between Wright and Lake. Wright a little bit slow off to turn 2. Lake can't take advantage, so he sits back in 9th for the moment.
Yeah, I can see even just going through these sections, the walls are never far away and mistakes are easy to make in this car, and unfortunately those are two combinations that don't always add up well. So attrition, always fear. Setting up for another pass here, looking to the inside, no.
And it poked his nose, a slight early turn-in for Billy Bob Wright to try and fend that one off. Still, he is right underneath that gearbox as Phil Lake, maybe a sneak attack, up into turn 7. Oh, and he gets chopped off at the nose. Brave stuff from Billy Bob Wright.
Billy fighting hard to defend that. Now they're coming up to the section of a track where we've been seeing most of our passes today, so let's see what Philippe Lake can do here. My guess would be, as we've got a battle in front of him, that's Rob Olyanek passing Daniel Sadjo for 6th position.
Yeah, and successfully too, down into turn 10, snuck through the inside, demotes Sadjo down to 7th. Let's take a look at how this one happened. I think this all started in 9 even. Ooh, yeah, look at the big slide that Sadjo had coming out of that corner, compromised his exit, and then from there just didn't even defend it. Rob now up to P6 after falling down a little bit from the start. Up next on his list is Ian Haycox.
I'll take back what I said during the pre-race show, Joe. I said the 18 laps didn't look too long for me. We're only on lap 6 of this thing. We've already had plenty of action, and these drivers have got 12 more laps of this to deal with.
And our leaders are already catching some traffic. David Rossi just got lapped, and poor Eduardo Prado got the worst of it, having to go around the outside of turn 3. He's still staying with Dudignan, but it has gone from 3/10 where it's hovering up to 5/10 now. This is separating them from Pawlowski as well.
I don't know what's happened to Ian Haycox, but he has been caught quite quickly by Rob Olyanek and Daniel Sadjo. We saw those two battling for 6th and 7th, and Ian Haycox was just having a nice little ride on his own in 5th position. Well, that's over, because now he's got a lot of pressure from behind from Rob.
Yeah, Ian's got to try and prove that that qualifying was not a fluke. Now they come up to the traffic, and yet again, turn 9 really seems to be making a difference, because if you can get a good run out of there, you got a chance at a pass as they come up to the traffic. Little puff of smoke as Rossi gets out of the way, but Olenek is by and up into P5.
It's got to be tough having the last name Rossi in any kind of motorsports, even if you're not related to Valentino or Alexander. Feels like he got pressure.
So Ian is still staying stuck right to Rob after that pass, but he's got to look in his mirrors because Daniel Sadjo is trying to follow him through as he's rocked up to the back of that bright green number 11.
Yeah, I've got to say it's one of my favourite coloured cars out there on the racetrack. Yeah, so let's see, Daniel Sadjo, is he going to wait all the way until turn 9 again? The problem is if he does, he'll probably lose contact with Rob Olyanek, who he's been fighting with.
Riding on board with Daniel. And as that was happening, Jacques Richard had something happen to him because he's come into the pits. I'm not exactly sure what. We'll try and take a glance and see if we can figure out what went down with him. as we follow this chase for what effectively is for the 5th position. It's Rob who holds that up at the front of this 3-car train. Ian Haycock's P6, the car we're on board with, Sadro, rides in P7.
Yeah, just a couple of turns away from that toe, and that's a big mistake. That's not going to help him get it done.
Big slide into the chicane, and you can see just how much that drops him back. I don't think he'll have a chance. Maybe he will have a chance. This time it's a mistake from Ian Haycock's through turn 9. He gathers it back together, and they come together once again, but Sadro, no chance as a defensive move from Ian Haycock's down into 10, looking for the over-under this time, squares off the late apex, and just nothing doing quite yet for that white machine.
Keeping half an eye on this, also keeping half an eye on the leaders. Dudagnon, since he's gotten by Prado, he has not been able to pull away. They're still within half a second of another.
Definitely given us something to watch out for. Oh, and another little mistake coming off the final chicane from Ian Haycock's on screen there. Sadro doesn't look like he gets a good enough run as they come down to turn 1. He's good on the braking, starts to close into the gearbox of the number 11. Looks for the shot off the corner as well. I'm not sure he's got enough.
While these two hold station for now, well, let's see what kind of exit they get out of this left-hander, because there's an overtaking opportunity coming up. And looks like Haycock's has done good enough to fend it off for now. Also point out, behind these two, there's a three-way battle going on for 8th. Not as intense as this right now, but we've got Philippe Lake ahead of Billy Bob, back in 9th place, and then Hugh Haycock's rounding out the top 10.
Billy Bob is putting a lot of pressure on Phil Lake. These two have raced together before here in this series. As they come through the left-right of 7 and 8. This is the popular spot coming up into 9. Let's see if either of them makes a mistake. Maybe sets up an opportunity. And Phil Lake, not the strongest out of there, but strong enough to keep Billy Bob at bay. So, as you've been watching the lead battle that has sort of just been kind of bubbling and brewing, we've been keeping track of those lap times. Let's see how the two of them compare, because even though it's been close, maybe we'll start to see a pattern here. And it does look like Prado's been slower on most of the 3 of the 5 laps that we've collected here. He looks a little bit slower. Oh, he must have... Oh no, I was going to say I thought he had an off, but it was just refreshing as they crossed the line. Oh, he was 0.3 slower this last lap. Wow.
Yeah, Dudagnon 2 laps ago took the fastest lap of a race, so you probably saw the purple come up at the top of your screen. But the other thing I've noticed, Joe, is Dudagnon seems to be a little bit more willing to hand it out in this car. If you really have the feel of this car, you can definitely let the rear end slide around a bit, and Dudagnon seems to be doing that a bit more than Prado. Prado seems to have it a bit more grounded. So a couple of different approaches to these corners. But then again, I could have just been seeing things. We saw Prado demonstrate his car control earlier when he got sideways under the bridge, but 2 turns later was challenging for the lead again.
You know, it was fascinating. I was reading on the forums, I can't remember if it was this week or last week, some of the drivers were trading tips on how to drive the car fast, because this is a small, close-knit community, and they're really not afraid of trying to help newcomers out. As we take a look at the battle for 11th, this is between Hugh Haycock's and Alberto Pellegrini. Hugh's the one we're riding on board with. The yellow machine that you see on your screen is Alberto, close down through turn 9. And one of the things I noted, Sam, is that it was either Michelle or Mick were talking about how they really use the differential to kind of rotate the car and point it where they want to go, and then just gas it up and go. And I've driven this car a lot. I never really thought about that. Of course, I was never really fast, so it was fascinating to watch. Actually, we got to go to Rob Olenek up at the front, because he's in a big side-by-side battle. I think they just made contact with Jamie Hall. They're going to be able to continue on. They're still side by side coming down to turn 1. That's Hall to the outside, Olenek to the inside, neither willing to give way, but Olenek is going to be able to squeak ahead, and he's temporarily got 4th place. Hall's going to try to come back at him, Sam.
Continue to run side by side. Believe it or not, you can get away with a little bit of bumping in this car as long as you do it at the right angle. I know they're known for being fragile, old Formula 1 cars, but that's normally when they crash big and at, slight contacts they can get away with. Rob Olenek on the inside, Hall on the outside, laid on the brakes, so still side by side, and Olenek gets a better run out. It's so hard to get the power down in this car that it's not always the guy on the outside with the wider turn who gets a better run off the turns.
It's a fair point. Oh, and another bobble from Olenek. This battle's not over yet. Jamie Hall tries to find a chance, but you mentioned trying to find that grip around the outside. He can't find it there through 8. So they come into 9 with Olenek back into 4th, Hall into 5th. And these two are old foes. They have raced against each other for years at this point over in the Camel GT series. And they've brought this fight to even older cars in the Lotus 49s.
Yeah, I don't think we're getting a Model T on iRacing anytime soon. But if they do, we'll probably see those two at it there as well. And for the first time, Joe, as this breaks up a little bit, I see no battles in the top 10 all race long as we've just gone halfway. But still a lot of cars running close enough to each other. I'm sure this will change within a couple of laps.
Yeah, the top 10 has just been fierce all race long. It's worth pointing out, though, that we saw Prado and Dudignon backed up into a group of cars. That has since disappeared because Pawlowski, who's been running 3rd much of this race, has fallen away to about 3 seconds back, so he's no longer a threat. And there's our leaders overtaking yet more traffic. That was Robert Reynolds. They went by.
And the 6th already back up for grabs. Ian Haycock's got a bad run out of a previous corner. Daniel Sadro goes down the inside. That was pretty simple, to be honest. And Philip Blake watching on from behind, thinking if these two continue to do this, I'll run up and try and get 6th place.
Yeah, Lake was fighting with Billy Bob Wright just a minute ago. You could see Billy Bob back there in the 4th car in line, who's also trying to catch up to them. But in the meantime, Daniel Sadro made that pass to hold on to it because Ian Haycock's still hounding him, try to get that one back. And another mistake from Daniel Sadro. Does not seem to be having a good time into turn 7. Ian Haycock can't do anything with it. Actually gets checked up because here comes Phil Lake ducking to the inside down into turn 9. Can't outbrake him into the corner, sets himself up to come off of the left-hander. They're all going to stay in order. Sadro 6th, Haycock 7th, Lake 9th, Lake 8th, and Billy Bob in 9th.
This almost reminds me of a game of chess or a supercross race where who's the guy who loses a race? It's normally the guy who makes the last mistake. A lot of these drivers slipping up in the middle of the top 10 here, and it's probably going to be the one who keeps on track the longest that ends up with that elusive 6th position or whatever they're going to be fighting for in 8 laps time.
It was Jasmine Beach pulling out of the way and letting them through.
Big sideways moment for Dudignon, but once again, he's just able to drive out of it, but it allows Prado to close in on him.
On screen, we got an attack from Ian Haycock down the inside of turn 1. Sadro gives him space at the apex, takes the long way around. This time, though, he does find the momentum, even with the car wiggling underneath him. Ian Haycock loses speed because of that. And here comes Phil Lake to the inside down into turn 3. He manages to take the racing line away and might actually get 2 positions in 2 corners. Daniel Sadro himself makes a mistake, but it is going to switch back to the right-hand side with turn 5. So Sadro gets the inside of this corner. He's awful shallow into it. Little puff of smoke as he tries to woe the car up. Look at this. This is madness. Almost 3 wide off of it. Phil Lake manages to get through, and he's the one that claims 6th.
Billy Wright comes up on this paddle, and he's not scared. He's going to throw himself right in it and take 8th place away from Ian Haycock. Ian has gone all the way back from 4th to 9th during this race now, but he could very easily find himself back in 6th if these 4 continue to scrap like this. They settle down for now, but here they come out of turn 9. We've seen plenty of battles coming through this final sector of the track already today.
Blake keeps a cool head and all the franticness of this fight for 6. Can he manage to stretch himself away with 7 laps to go, which is about to become 6 laps to go? They hit turn 11, and you're right about Prado starting to catch our leader, Michel Dudignon. He's closed it back down to 0.2 of a second now.
And this is a turn zone. This turn 1 is where Dudignon keeps handing the rear end out, and you saw a little bit of it there this time around. And that's where Prado is clawing his time back. I think Dudignon is struggling with that first corner. And this, what they're going through right now, I think that's called turn 3. That's where, even now, even through there, Dudignon's sliding all over the place. And Prado sees it. He's going to look to the outside. He's going to challenge for the lead once again.
Prado pounces, but making it the hard way around. Dudignon defends. Eduardo Prado can't quite pass there, but he's not done yet. Stays right on the gearbox of the number 1 machine. Michel Dudignon continuing to defend through turn 7. Now into turn 8 as it switches back. Could we see maybe a bit of revenge here through 9 and 10 from Eduardo Prado? This is where he lost it before. He goes way to the outside, try to square off the hairpin. It looks decent, but I'm not sure that it's good enough. He is absolutely hounding him in every corner.
Yeah, but I think Dudignon's got this side of the track down as they come out turn 10. He gets a good enough exit in. Even though these cars aren't exactly aerodynamic, he still pulls to the side as they go down the hill to try and break any sense of the slipstream that Prado could be getting. And we saw them side by side through this turn earlier on. As a matter of fact, I think we've seen them side by side through all of these turns at some point during this race. So here they come through the final chicane to cross the line. 5 laps left to go. And this is where Prado, I think, needs to think about what he wants to do in turn 1 to set Dudignon up in case Dudignon slides successively again, because this seems to be the Achilles heel right here for Dudignon.
He closes in, but it's not as close as what we saw last lap. So he's going to have to continue to chip away once more at that lead. And this time it's Prado who makes a mistake, coming in hot into turn 3 and loses a little bit of ground.
Yeah, the rest of the top 10 seems to be a little bit calmed down for now. I know I said that a few laps ago and then it heated back up again. Give a shout out to Gary Teal, by the way, in 10th place for the number 3 car. Oh, we got other problems. No, here we are. We picked Gary up on screen here. Even though in the number 3 car, 10th isn't where he'd like to be running, I have a feeling he got a bit of a bad start to this race. He dropped outside the top 10 and he's made his way back up there. Who knows, maybe if there's a couple of incidents late on in this race, he'll be able to pick up a couple more positions.
There's a little damage on the nose of the number 3, so he must have had some contact with someone somewhere along the line that set him backwards. Behind them, got a battle in the mid-pack between Urquhart and Bruno. This is for 14th position. Bruno, the chasing blue machine that you see, and Philippe Urquhart in the green and yellow. Right on board. One thing I love about these onboard shots with these 49s, you can see how much the suspension moves, especially when you slide wide like that, as Bruno has to catch the car.
Meanwhile, the leaders cross the line, 4 laps to go. Prado's still a little bit back of Dudignon for now. And you see, there's why Dudignon just set the fastest lap of the race.
He's responding. And what I love about this is he's being made to work for these wins. Dudignon, without Mick Claridge here, you'd usually expect to just be able to trounce the field and run away from everybody because he tends to have incredible pace in this car. But I love the presence of Eduardo Prado to give our front runners something to think about and the way that he has just taken this car by the neck.
Yeah, it'd be nice with 8 rounds left to go this season if we could get one race where we get a right old scrap between Prado, Dudignon and Claridge for the win somewhere. And right now, we've got a pretty good scrap in the likes of Dudignon and Prado. Dudignon, when he doesn't make mistakes, he seems to be able to cover that number 2 car off. He's got the number 1 on his car for a reason. He has a higher I rating than any of the rest of the field. This is an official series race.
Exactly. So even though we were talking about points of the broadcast championship that we cover, it's a private thing that they keep track of, although anyone is welcome to enter just by showing up in these races here on Saturday mornings, afternoon, I guess if you're over in Europe. But they are also competing for the iRacing official points. There's the official championship to worry about. There's a little bit of a slide coming into the final chicane from Dudignon, but certainly not losing it there. Meanwhile, back in 6, 3-car train. They've dropped Ian Haycox since we last looked at these 3. Lake is in 6. Billy Bob Wright sits in 7th, and Daniel Sadro is in 8th. One mistake could be costly between any of these 3. Billy Bob Wright, oh, with a late look down into turn 1. Given space at the apex from Lake. Gotta love that the Floridian is not afraid to both be aggressive under the brakes on attack as well as defense. Only 3 laps to go. Another look to the inside, very late on the brakes, and once again he's there but not quite.
It's gotta be nice knowing you don't have a front wing on this car. You don't have to worry about wrecking your aerodynamics if you go into the back of the car in front.
At least at this track. Take it to Monza and then you're in trouble. So Lake continues to fend him off. Credit to Phil Lake for staying cool under pressure. He repeatedly gives him about a car's width whenever he sees him duck his nose in, but doesn't lose the position.
Only going to have to do it for 2.5 more laps. Our leader's coming across the line now to complete lap 16 of 18. And 6th place has been a highly sought after position pretty much the entire race. And this Dudignon sets another fast lap.
And what's interesting is Prado set his personal best as well on that same lap. 47.7 for Eduardo. So even though it's been Michel who tends to be setting the fastest lap overall, Eduardo is at least hanging with him pretty well and pushing his car. There's your comparison between them. Once again, looks like Prado just that little bit slower on most of the laps. Not by huge amounts. They're pretty evenly matched.
But Dudignon, even though it's only half a second, gotta imagine he's feeling pretty comfortable at this rate, because if he can maintain this gap heading into turn 1, which has really been the only turn I've seen him struggling with today, he should be able to have Prado covered. Prado really needs to start responding.
He does, but I'm not sure that Michel has got this one wrapped up. It all depends. It looks like he has pulled it out when it matters, because it's now up to 8 tenths between them. You can see the extended gap coming down into turn 11. Just like you were saying, we need to watch here as the white flag is getting ready to come out through the first half of the lap, where Eduardo Prado has the measure of the Frenchman. And they've got traffic in front of them. Johnny Bell is just ahead. Could he maybe be a pick for Eduardo Prado to catch out Michel Dudignon? Down into turn 1. He gains a little bit of ground, but he's got to get closer than that if he wants to go on the attack. Now they come out of turn 2, up towards 3, and Bell is just going to stay off to the side and out of the way. Nicely done by the back marker.
No, Dudignon really getting it turned in there. Turn 3, but gets it out in the grass, and that allows Prado to catch up, but then Prado has to back out of it. He caught Dudignon too quickly.
Yeah, 2 wheels out in the grass from Michel. That could have been lights out. but he holds on to it. This gives a little bit of hope to Prado. He continues to pressurize him. The Brazilian desperately wants to get his maiden victory, and he wants to stop the run that we've seen from Michel Dudignon, who is looking for his 4th in a row this season in the 4th round. He's running out of opportunities. Could he maybe do something here in turn 9? This was the hot spot early in the race. Michel Dudignon successful off the corner.
Yeah, nicely done there from Dudignon. That was really a place that they could have gave Prado an opportunity if he hadn't been careful. Now, one last run down the hill here. Prado would have to do something super aggressive to make anything happen on the inside, or even the final chicane. Dudignon's looking not comfortable, Joe. It depends how aggressive Prado wants to be.
Got to be smooth through these last few corners. Into the final chicane. All he has to do is keep it tidy and get a good run off the corner. It is a long run to the line, mind you. And I think he's got it. Michel Dudignon is 4 for 4 here in the Lotus 49 Grand Prix Legend Series. To give Prado credit for that, though.
Yeah, we'll get Pavlovsky across the line here in 3rd place. 6 through 8 are still nose to tail, but I think they're holding station for now. It's going to be Philippe Blake in 6th, Billy Bob in 7th, and Daniel Sadro coming home in 8th place.
Great stuff between those three. It's a shame we weren't able to give them more attention. As 10th place, a top 10 under threat. Gary Teal has been caught by Hugh Haycox, but unfortunately not passed. So Teal gets that 10th place. I believe our last battle that we've got going on is 16th between Tyler and Ang. Tyler leads in the green and white, with the fully green machine behind of Andrew Ang and the number 17 giving chase. He's awful close coming to this final chicane. A little bit of pressure on Tyler, who we haven't really give any screen time. A little bit wide through the second apex. Can he hold onto it as they both accelerate to the line, and Tyler's going to take 16th.
Well, good race for a lot of those cars, able to keep up on track. Some not so fortunate. Robert Reynolds is having his engine worked on in the garage. But, yeah, I guess I'll be loading that in a hauler.
Yeah, it looks like he's already ready for them to do so. So that takes us to break here on the Global Sim Racing channel. We got a fantastic one, but we got an even better post-race show coming up with driver interviews as well as the official results. If you watch on screen between now and then, you'll see all the upcoming races here on the GSRC. Welcome back to Twin Ring Motegi here in Japan. We just watched round 4 of the Grand Prix Legends series on the more squiggly of the two rings, the road course, of course. And Michel Dudignon did take win number 4, but it was much closer this time than some of the previous races this season. Look at the gap at the line, 3/10. Eduardo Prado even led some of the laps, and he was on pole. But Eduardo's got a little bit more work to do to try and take his first victory. Roman Pawlowski gets third, well back behind them. Just didn't have the pace to keep up. Rob Olenek had to fight for that 4th place. In fact, fell well down before recovering to just outside the podium. Jamie Hall with the top 5. And then Phil Lake, how about this? Didn't qualify too well, 11th, but came up to 6th. Another driver who had to fight a lot, especially with the car behind him, Billy Bob Wright, who finished 7th, also same amount of positions gained. And Daniel Sadro went a little bit backwards, unfortunately, finishing P8. Ian Haycox as well going backwards, qualified incredibly well all the way on the 2nd row, but finishes 9th in the end. Gary Teal rounds out your top 10. Sam?
Yeah, the other Haycox just a couple of positions back. Hugh Haycox finishes in 11th place ahead of Alberto Pellegrini in 12th position. Steve Hogan comes home in 13th place ahead of Andres Bruno in 14th. Philippe Eckhart comes home in 15th place ahead of Bill Tyler and Andrew Eng. Ryan Garbin and Don Good round out the cars on the lead lap, and one lap down in 20th place is Johnny Bell.
21st goes to Jasmine Beach with Bruce Nelson in 22nd. Then it's David Rossi in 23rd. And finally, you get into our retirees. Colin Coker out of it in 24th. Robert Reynolds, Jacques Richard, and Atilno Almiral all did not finish today in this race. So we were hoping we'd have a few drivers to talk to, but they're all a little bit microphone shy today, unfortunately. Sam, though, we're used to having you over in the Lotus 79, a little bit more modern F1 car, but still retro machinery. How do you think this series compares to the racing over there?
Well, this series is always unique, Drew, and the fact that the Lotus 79 is still very aerodynamic dependent, so the rules of racing still apply. You know, the car doesn't handle as well in traffic when it's got dirty air on the front wing. If you enter a turn too hot, you'll be hurt on exit. If you're on the outside, you'll get a better run on exit, and all that. But the Lotus 49 is really interesting because at the end of the day, it comes down to racing. There's okay, the slipstream, dirty air, all that still exists, but the car isn't upset by it as much. You can win a battle on the outside line, you can win a battle on the inside line, you could win a battle by driving in deep or by coming off better, and you might have not necessarily been the favourite entering the turn. You know, it's some really creative racing, some really good driving. I mean, we saw some wheel-to-wheel moments out there today with not a whole lot of carnage. So, great racing by all these drivers. Let's also emphasize this was a single split race. This wasn't the cream of a crop. We were watching the drivers, you know, number 27, for all I know, they might only have 500 I rating, but they put on a decent show for us. So kudos to all of them.
I can tell you that nobody was lower than the 900s as far as I rating goes. So everybody's still fairly well balanced in this series. And I agree, this was a testament to the talent in this series. In fact, the strength of field was 2,300 here today, which is not too shabby for a single split in this big of a field. We're going to wrap up, though, since it looks like everybody isn't interested in talking to us today. So some thank yous go out, including to the Lotus 49 community for bringing us back for another season of coverage, as well as to iRacing for putting us on IESN. Again, make sure and subscribe. Just go to their YouTube page, click the red button that says subscribe, and see all of the Lotus 49 Grand Prix Legend Series each weekend. Thanks to the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcast listed here on your screen. And additional thanks to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today, Sam, Sean, Dougie, and Don, our spotter behind the scenes. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. You can also check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. The next race that we have is at Silverstone. So looking forward to the classic Silverstone, actually, we should say. We've just gotten a more modern one here in iRacing recently, but they've elected for the historic layout here in this series. That'll be a week from today on July 13th. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.